your picture with us.
Thank you for putting me on the spot here. I wasn't expecting this. But what we're going to do is we're going to put a go-kart track facility in the back storage area, which is about 15,000 square feet. Indoor, climate-controlled, electric go-karts. Should be a real blast for everybody here on Fremont Street, and a great addition to Indianapolis, and thank you for having us.
Thank you. JJ, are you going to bring all your Absurd is Normal at Indianapolis? We have brought in a lot of food and beverage vendors, as well as entertaining venues, as well as attractions. Attractions are coming. After Gene, there are 2 more attractions coming, which is going to be making a name for itself in downtown Las Vegas. They are higher than any structure. There'll be 2 towers at Indianapolis. We are negotiating with them for the next year's installation. JJ, now I call him JJ. His name is Justin. Absurd is Normal at Indianapolis. We have brought in a lot of food and beverage vendors, as well as entertaining venues, as well as attractions. Attractions are coming. After Gene, there are 2 more attractions coming, which is going to be making a name for itself in downtown Las Vegas. They are higher than any structure. There'll be 2 towers at Indianapolis. We are negotiating with them for the next year's installation. JJ, now I call him JJ. His name is Justin. Absurd is Normal at Indianapolis. We have brought in a lot of food and beverage vendors, as well as entertaining venues, as well as attractions. Attractions are coming. After Gene, there are 2 more attractions coming, which is going to be making a name for itself in downtown Las Vegas. They are higher than any structure. There'll be 2 towers at Indianapolis. We are negotiating with them for the next year's installation. JJ, now I call him JJ. His name is Justin.
And it is the ribbon cutting of our one and only world first Cannabis Museum. We wish you the best. JJ. Okay, now wait a minute. Okay, now wait a minute. The flavor of the month, you don't do it. What is your favorite? Is this attached?
I'll get you some more.
I'm very good. I can do this. What kind of a plant is that?
A cannabis plant!
Oh, right. Does everybody see that? Please, those of you who are taking pictures. Do you eat a leaf at a time? How do we do this? Right there. Does everybody see this? Oh my. Okay, so what is your flavor of the day? Wait, first of all, were you introduced? What kind of...
Welcome everyone to the Cannabis Show. I'm your host, Michelle Davis, and thank you so much for joining us, everyone on Facebook Live. I'm so glad that you guys can be a part of the show today. Now, that footage that you had just seen, I actually was at just maybe an hour ago. It was on Fremont Street at the Neonopolis, and it's the grand opening of Cannabition, which is the world's first cannabis museum in the nation. So I was actually got an invitation. Danny and Gene and I went down, and if you saw, Gene was put on the spot. So some exciting news coming in the forefront, but the mayor did the ribbon cutting. It was great. Other than that, I wanted to give a shout out also to Vegas Cannabis Magazine, to Bill and Stephanie. They are the owners of this magazine, and Lid Pins as well. This is a great local magazine, comes out every month, and I have the honor to write for this magazine. So this month was for CBD and pets. So not sure if any of you deal with a pet who has separation anxiety. My Min Pin broke her 2 front legs. So it's been quite a challenge for this little pup, and CBD has come across as a, well, you can just read the article. It's on page 22. But on this episode, we're talking, and it's kind of a segue from the last show, talking about parenting. And so I have here the host of the Stupid Cancer Show. That's why I have the background here, as you can see, which is an amazing podcast. Please go and download it. We're going to talk about the Stupid Cancer Show, but Matthew Zachary, wow, this guy is a motivator, a changer. He is running the East Coast like no other, and he is also a summit speaker all over the place, comes to Vegas quite often. musician, and he is just a super dad. So I wanted to show you guys a segment of his show. You can download it. It's a podcast, but it's also on YouTube. And take a look a little at what his show is all about. So watch this.
We hope you don't have cancer, but if you do, this show's for you. The Stupid Cancer Show.
Hey guys, we are back here in the Stupid Cancer Studios, and I'm joined by my incredibly, amazingly dear friend, Dr. Dan Shapiro. Woo! And his fabulous miracle daughter, Alex. Dan Shapiro and I have known each other for many, many years now. He was one of the first young adult cancer survivors, we'll get to his story in a minute, that I had ever met. He was an author. It was the first book by a young adult cancer survivor I'd ever read, and we'll get to that book in just a second. And he has spoken at our conferences. He's been on the audio version of the show several times, which you can also check out on our YouTube channel. And just an amazing guy that is so revered, and what you've managed to do in your life because of what you didn't ask to have happen to you is extraordinary. But I'll leave it at that, and I will allow you to introduce yourself. Tell us your quick story. We can go to the book, and the young lady sitting next to you is every reason why our stories and our choices matter.
I would agree with that. Unfortunately, Alex is the most productive thing I've done in my life. Or I guess reproductive would be more
went
accurate.
there.
He went there. He did. Yeah, so I was diagnosed when I was a junior in college, and it briefly kind of obliterated my life plans. I spent 5 years in and out of treatment.
What did you have?
I had lymphoma, Hodgkin's disease, that was a little tough to get rid of. A couple relapses, bone marrow transplant, relapsed after that. So, did Cancer's Boot Camp. It was not like drive-by, mild. It took about 5 years altogether.
And let's put this in context. This was not in the 21st century. This was in the dark ages.
Back when I was a kid, we didn't have the fancy schmancy immune cancer chemotherapy stuff you got now.
I walked to radiation uphill both ways.
Every day, radiation.
Must fit the radiation. And I got to tell you, like you were able to become a real pioneer in what it meant to share a story, like a real young adult. Why is it different? It's not necessarily better or worse than pediatrics or adult cancer, but what matters most is why it's different, and how you chose to intentionally or unintentionally self-advocate for yourself, specifically in the world of fertility, was kind of pioneering to challenge a system that wasn't aware that this was important to you.
I wish I could say now that some of those struggles I had don't happen to any kids anymore. I would love to be able to say that, but unfortunately, some of the same issues I faced, which was getting treated next to people who were all in their 60s and 70s, the fertility, not hearing about fertility from my physicians. It was actually my mother who happened to be talking to me.
So that was the Stupid Cancer Show, and I wanted to give the privilege of welcoming the host of the Stupid Cancer Show via Skype, Matthew Zachary. Yay! Hey Matthew, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time and coming on. I know you're on the East Coast, which time zones can be a little fuzzy, but you're here, which is great.
It's a pleasure.
Yes. So everyone is kind of wondering, okay, so Stupid Cancer, awesome, want to learn more about it, but let's kind of tie in how Stupid Cancer is a part of the cannabis community.
Well, I started the organization 11 years ago, which was 10 years after my own personal diagnosis of cancer in 1996. And the organization was based on being more of a new take on cancer advocacy and research. It was more for the next generation of people in their 30s and 20s and 30s, really.
Right.
And we are way more vocal about what we need, what we care about, what's important to us, a little more deferent to the status quo and more vocal on how we can be a little more disruptive in what needs to happen from the perspective of being young cancer survivors.
Right, you were saying how a lot of young cancer patients don't get the attention and the time that they necessarily deserve like older people would.
Yeah, so cancer is a disease of the aged, but it does happen 1 out of every 10 times to someone under the age of 40. And this isn't pediatric children cancer. This is cancer in your teens, 20s, and 30s,
right,
which is a very formidable time of your life where cancer plays a very different role in how you rehabilitate, get back to living, and survive.
Absolutely.
With issues like fertility, family planning, college, careers, dating, but also we talk about pain management and anxiety and stress and just getting through the day. And medicinal cannabis has been at the core narrative of everything we stood for 11 years now. And this goes back to what we call patient liberties and patient rights, where you have the right to know what your choices are, what your risks are, and what your options are when you're being treated. Now, we take a medicinal perspective because we're a nonprofit and we can't advocate for recreational. We all know that as sort of an allegory to what this is all about. But if you live in a state where it is legal, medicinally, and your doctor gives you a script for a product, you have the right to know what dispensary to go to. You have the right to be educated as to what strains are right for you. And you have the right to know what other cancer patients say about which strains help them on different side effects beyond the anecdotal. But you also have the right to know about the data, the research, and all the stuff we don't hear about very much, which is happening overseas, which is incredibly valuable and credible. So that's where we stand on the cannabis issue.
Thank you so much for filling us in on that, because a lot of people want to know, what do I do if I have cancer and I need to have like some pain management, or if they know someone that's dealing with it. In regards to my sister, she had never smoked, never drank. She was very much anti, but when she had cancer the second time, how much it helped her in so many ways. That's where she became an advocate for it. But the one thing I wanted to talk about was, in your case, you wanted to be a dad, always. You've always wanted to have a family, and when you were diagnosed with cancer, a lot of people even 10 years ago didn't really understand and know, you know, you got to take actions if you want a family to save your sperm or save your eggs, because of the unfortunateness of being sterile if you go through the chemo and radiation. Now, in your case, you kind of took a different approach to that. So let's talk about your story a little bit.
Yeah, so our research over the last couple of years has shown that 80% of men are made aware of sperm banking because it's a largely male-dominated field, and we think there's gender bias there. But only 13% of women are made aware of infertility risk when they're in their fertile years diagnosed with cancer. Right. So if you happen to be in those 13%, you are likely to be given the option of preserving your fertility. oocytes, cryobankings, embryos, whatever that looks like. My experience was that I was in pediatrics even though I was 21, so they did have me bank my sperm. The challenge with that is it's not covered by insurance, and I had no prospect of being a biological father ever if I didn't keep them in a jar frozen somewhere for 14 years. So my out-of-pocket cost to have my beautiful 8-year-old twins now was well in the 40,000s just to be a dad. I was privileged to have the ability to have those expenses, but no one should have to pay to be a mom or a dad, which is constitutional right, by the way, if cancer gets in the way. So that's where we stand on your right to parenthood through cancer.
Yeah, it's kind of a scary standpoint when you think about it. Your time is valuable. You only have so much time, and if it was in a situation where you only had a certain amount of time where you could freeze or do what you needed, necessarily it comes down to money, and that ultimately can be a really grueling thing that a lot of people are dealing with nowadays. What do you think is an option? I mean, we always have adoptions. You know, there's a lot of things where the big sister, big brother approach comes in. But in your case, you knew that this is what you wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to be a dad. I think that the elephant in the room is cost and awareness of cost. And, you know, this is also an employee issue, too. If your employer, depending on what benefits you have with your employer. Most young adults are employed when they get cancer. It all comes down to what your benefits are. So even knowing what your benefits package includes, because sometimes it does include fertility preservation, but the rub is that it usually includes fertility preservation if you were born infertile, not if infertility is induced by chemotherapy. So there's a huge narrative now going on HR around the country to switch those HR benefit models from not just what they call congenital infertility to, I'll use a fancy word, iatrogenic infertility, which is the science of induced biological deficit.
I also really like the fact that a lot of men are coming out with their voices, where it was before a lot of women coming out with the fact that they wanted to be moms, or the IVF, where now a lot of dads are coming up. And even for the common case of cancer, this is something that everybody should know about, everybody should be aware about. Even 10 years ago, it wasn't talked about. And that was my sister's ultimate frustration, is no one came and talked to her about preserving her eggs. So she was dealt with this devastation, and she kind of wanted to help people know about it. So this is a very good topic.
I think from almost an anthropologic perspective, 10 years ago was the dark ages compared to where we are today in cancer research, drug development, discovery. And it is no longer, like, here's the boogeyman statement, cancer is no longer the death sentence that it used to be. And more people living now with cancer, living beyond cancer, 85% remission in most cases. People live with this disease and live longer with this disease than ever before. So issues of family planning really didn't matter 15, 20 years ago, because you were probably just going to die. There was a risk to even having that conversation, and yet you still have the right to be made aware of your choice. Today, we're living with these lifestyle issues that we're entitled to because cancer got in the way of them. So how do we ensure those benefits to getting your life back together that you normally will have, because we can predict you'll probably be fine in the long term.
Absolutely. You know, I want to kind of mention about your show also, because this is just a tip of the iceberg of some of the topics you discuss. And I remember listening to, my favorite was your 400th episode that talked about your story and who you were, and that was back in December of last year. So first off, let's talk about the name Stupid Cancer. I mean, I wouldn't sit there and say, how'd you think of a name like that? But I'll go ahead and let's begin the story of your podcast show.
It's not that glamorous. The truth is, I'm an 80s kid. And when I was given the opportunity to start a charity and be given someone handed me a show and said, here, this is yours, name it what you want. Stupid Cancer, to me, is what Homer Simpson might say if he were diagnosed with cancer. So it's just like, why not just say that? And 11 years ago, you couldn't make fun of cancer. It was like still this whisper, taboo, you know, and like Lance Armstrong really tried to make a difference in like the awareness of cancer. He went on Oprah. It was a really big deal, but it didn't quite hit society yet that we were ready to make fun of it. So I just wanted to be that group that was a little deferent to the comfort factors. But the show was called The Stupid Cancer Show, and I had an opportunity to have like literally the first podcast in cancer, which started May 28, 2007.
Wow.
So over 406 shows in 11 years, and now continuing on YouTube. By the way, shiny new logo.
Me too.
And we've covered hundreds and hundreds of topics, ranging from policy and infertility to viruses and immunotherapy to personal stories and financial toxicity. We've had CEOs and politicians and celebrities, and the list, the audit of the last 406 shows is extraordinary if you want to go through it. But there hasn't been a single show that hasn't really made a strong point about why young adult cancer is different, and it matters, and it needs a voice.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because again, Stupid Cancer is the leader for young adult cancer advocacy. And so let's talk a little bit about the difference between young adult cancer and others.
So it's always been pediatric cancer and everyone else. That's been how it's been since the 1970s. And young adult cancer was a conversation that went on about 20 years ago, where we started to look at cancers in your teens and 20s and 30s were different types of cancers than the ones you had as a kid or an older adult. So lung cancer in your 70s and lung cancer in your 30s, they're completely different biological diseases.
Wow.
And most young people that get lung cancer don't smoke. Probably like 90% don't smoke. Colon cancer, typical in the 80s and 90-year-olds, 70-year-olds. Colon cancer in your 20s, different type of disease.
Wow.
So the need to understand the research behind why is this a different disease, so chemo doesn't work on you. Also, when you're younger, there really is no early detection, there's no screening, there's no risk reduction, there's no prevention. How do you prevent colon cancer in your 20s?
Yeah.
You know, so this defined the narrative of why young adult cancer needs to be a third segment of cancer. It's pediatrics, young adult, and then everyone else.
Right.
So it wasn't better or worse, it was different, and here's why. So no screenings, different cancers, chemo doesn't work, different social issues, psychosocial issues, mental health issues, rehabilitation issues, very different when you're 26 than when you're 6 or 66. That is what gave birth to it, that narrative.
And now, where you're at now, you travel all over the place, you speak amongst on youth cancer and, you know, adult cancer. And so if people want to find you, where can they go and get more information about that?
We are thankfully everywhere. Just Google Stupid Cancer on any social platform. Actually, you really couldn't Google Stupid Cancer on Twitter. Look for Stupid Cancer on any social platform, and we are there. Our website is stupidcancer.org. One thing I do want to comment on is that we look at what is progress in cancer these days, when it's not just about the drug development and all the exciting stuff coming out of the pharma companies. Because medicine is, it's like Star Trek today.
Right.
Like so different today than it was 10 years ago. There's like 80 new drugs now that didn't exist 2 years ago. And they're all doing incredible things. But in terms of policy and research and best practices and standards of care and the way doctors talk to age appropriately, the way nurses know how to understand that you're 18 and not 80, what we've accomplished with our community and our peers groups has been astonishing. So your sister would have, like, everything today is so much better than it was when I was sick, when she was sick. Today, if you're young with cancer, you are treated age appropriately. You are made aware of support resources that are specifically for you. We're working on the fertility stuff, we're working on the insurance stuff, but as a general rule of thumb, young adult cancer today is way better than it was 10 years ago, thanks to lots of effort.
Yep, and thanks to lots of effort, to all the help that helps you put your show together, all your co-hosts, and you want to give any name drops to any of your peeps out there that help you with your show?
I used to have a co-host. I'm looking for a new one.
Oh, hey, hint, hint. Anyone out there?
Come to New York. You'll be my guest co-host.
There you go.
We have 6 playlists now on YouTube. We're building some more. There's going to be a show on cannabis and cancer. There's going to be a show on reproductive rights. There's going to be a show showcasing the human beings that work in pharma, that they're not evil people, that they get cancer too. We just uploaded all of the videos from our annual congress called CancerCon, and we have a regular Stupid Cancer show, which just has great stories and great narrative like we've been doing for the last 11 years.
I love it. And I was just looking at your post today, even 2 hours ago, on your IG, Stupid Cancer. Has anyone seen my immune system? So you really go over a lot of topics. They're very, very in-depth. Again, you guys got to follow them on IG, but most importantly, just listen to the podcast. Matthew Zachary, super dad. So let's talk about your twins. You know, school just started. Is it over there starting on the East Coast as well?
Yeah, 3rd grade on Wednesday.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's I don't. Can I show you a picture over Skype? I don't know if that works if I do that.
But I'd also like to inform everyone, what kind of cancer did you have, if you don't mind me sharing?
I had what they thought was terminal brain cancer at the age of 21. So go figure, that was a huge mistake on their part, but all good.
Right?
It is or not, but
like seriously, that is just, oh my gosh.
Yeah, they told me I'd never be a dad. They told me I wouldn't live for 5 years. They told me all these things. And you know what? Never tell someone they can't do something.
That's crazy. And now look at you. Driving on the East Coast, amazing podcast, super dad, and more.
Yeah, they're fun. I got to tell you, you know, like, and this isn't like me being like the dad guy.
Yeah.
And there's no roadmap for being a parent, obviously, but the idea that I would never be a father and then giving birth, well, having my wife give birth, but having
Yeah.
you know these two creatures in my life right now, it's like you really have to worry about, did I give them a cancer? Are they going to be predisposed to this? Genetic
right.
testing, like this idea that when you're done with cancer, you're done with cancer. No,
Yeah.
just lives with you like luggage for the rest of your life, and you have to figure out where you decide it's going to bug you or not.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't spend every day hoping they don't get cancer.
Right.
You can't control that, and whether I had a genetic defect or not, like it's just another thing you have to learn to live with as a survivor, integrating that into just your day to day.
Yeah, and so let's talk about you and your wife at the time integrating that idea of having a family and just the teamwork and support that it took for you both to do what was necessary in order to have your beautiful daughters.
And my wife lost her brother to cancer when he was 19 before I met her.
Wow.
So she came into the relationship with me equally jaded with baggage from
Right.
a different perspective as a bereaved sibling.
Wow.
And it's kind of like a really weird cancermatch.com when we met each other on a blind date. Because we kind of just didn't care about our baggage. They kind
Right.
of negated each other. And we just really focused on the two of us.
Well, in one way or another, I think almost everyone has been stricken with either they have had cancer or someone in their family or someone, a best friend, one way or another.
Yeah, if you haven't, then you're the minority in this conversation.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, we got married in 2005, and we really want to have kids, and we just were debating for years and years and years, and finally, did we have enough money
Right.
to do the IVF procedure? Did I have enough money to thaw the sperm? There's so much that goes on that you don't even understand, let alone can prepare for. So like 2 years of planning, and then we finally had them in 2010. But like everything went through our heads. Her brother died, I nearly died, her uncle died, my grandfather died, my cousin died, my aunt died. Like everyone, you're right. What do you do to just make a decision, own that decision,
Right.
no matter what's going to happen?
It's accepting responsibility, and when you make a decision, you stick with it. And I think for you, at 21 being said all those things the doctors told you, you kind of were like, well, it's not like you're going to show them, but this is what your life is about.
What's important to me is that patients know that they have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And that, again, speaking to the younger generations, like
Right.
our age and down,
Yep.
it really is about questioning what they think the doctor thinks is in their best interest.
Mm-hmm.
Story I like to tell, which is pretty quick, is that I was a concert pianist before I was sick.
Okay.
I was a trained concert pianist. I was going to go to grad school in California. I was going to write for Hollywood and compose film scores. That was my dream.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got sick, my left hand stopped working.
Oh.
So I lost all the fine motor coordination from the brain tumor.
Hmm.
And the doctors didn't know if I'd ever be able to play again once they got it out. But that's not the fun part. The fun part is that once I finished all of my surgery and radiation, they wanted to give me chemotherapy, which back then was not really effective in brain cancer. I didn't know that at the time.
Right.
But it turns out that I have an uncle who is a geneticist, and I didn't realize, I had no idea what he did for a living. He was just my uncle.
You're like, he's just some
And-
scientist guy with lab
Yeah,
coat.
just a genius scientist guy. And he took a look at the chemotherapy that the doctors at the hospital wanted to give me.
Uh-huh.
And he found out that what was in that mix were drugs that would have put nerve damage in my fingers and toes forever.
Wow.
That was not disclosed to me by the doctors who wanted me to take this, who knew I was a concert pianist.
Jesus.
So when my uncle tells me, Matt, you don't want this chemotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
You'd rather die next year being able to play piano than live 80 years and not have piano in your life, because I know that's important to you.
Right.
So I went back to those doctors and said, I don't want to go on chemotherapy. I'm saying no to you
Mm-hmm.
because this matters more to me than anything else you think matters more to me. And here I am 22 years later for making that choice. But it goes back to the fact that if you're not made aware of your risks, if you're not able to question the doctor who is supposed to be the expert, but you need to have a conversation with those people. I'm not throwing doctors under the bus at
No.
all. It's their job to do no harm and
Yeah.
help you.
Exactly.
but you need to question authority. Get 9 opinions if you need to.
Right.
You never know what is important to you until you discover what could happen to you.
Wow. Well, first off, my board operators, can we give him like a round of applause for that story? I mean, like, seriously, like, louder, people. Come on, let's, like, yeah. My God, that is amazing. I mean, to sit there and say no to the doctors, hallelujah to your uncle, but yeah, he pretty much saved your life. But again, those stories is what captivates you to have the story that you have today for your podcast, and that's why The Stupid Cancer is like the number one. Is it like the only cancer podcast out there, I think?
Well, we were pioneers in the day, but obviously everyone's got a podcast, these days, and like I'd like to think that we helped give birth to a trend.
Yes.
Where people saw that they could have their voice amplified in cancer as advocates in their stories. Back when blogs were really, really big 10 years ago.
Tumblr and...
But now podcasts are really kind of tiny, and YouTube is a big deal now.
Yep.
So we're kind of trying to stay ahead of the game at this point. Now, there really are not many cancer advocacy driven YouTube channels.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to really reinvent that and drive more subscribers and more great content and great partnerships out there. But giving people a voice in today's digital age is the greatest gift that technology has given us. If we could find one positive in this sea of ridiculousness that social media has become, it's given people the ability to share their stories through triumph and tragedy to inspire other people to live their lives on their terms.
Absolutely.
So if we in any way helped inspire other people to create podcasts or blogs or write books or journal, whatever that looks like, please, that's a wonderful wake in the ocean for us to own.
I love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. And as well, for anyone who has cancer, your podcast is hope for them. To know that they're not alone, to know that there's so many different resources, to know that there's answers for them from, the experts like you.
One thing I'll say is we're actually converting all of our audio podcasts to the YouTube channel over the next 6 months. So every single thing we ever talked about will be archived, tagged, and coded on YouTube. So we'll be able to share any content on any issue at any time.
Well, thank you so much, Matthew Zachary, for your time. I know we're a little over from what I said, 15 or 20 minutes, but my heart goes out to you because you've changed so many people's lives. That's really rewarding.
It's been an honor to be here, and with love to your late sister, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. To all you out there, be sure to go and follow Stupid Cancer Show. They're on IG, Facebook, but most importantly, their show is downloadable, so check them out on iTunes. And the Cannabis Show is live every first and third of the month, every first and third Thursday of the month. So if you're at all hanging out, and it is on the 5th Thursday, which kind of runs on sometimes on the month and sometimes not. But again, I just want to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for your comments, your shares, your loves, your hearts, your likes, all that stuff. And wishing you all the best. So I hope you take this in mind, parenting, mom, dad, cancer awareness, and just stick it in your back pocket and think about it for a little bit. All right, wishing you all the best. Love you all. I'll see you soon. Bye.